Well, welcome guys to another week of Brett's Property Rants. So actually it's quite exciting this week because you get lots of negativity and you got lots of positivity and you got all different types of perspectives. But it's amazing because I would have expected this week to be, or certainly by now, the end of November, or coming to the end of November, to really things to have started to put the brakes on and slowing down. But we haven't seen that yet. Now there is some reports of things slowing down and certainly activity has slowed down a bit, but not to the extent that we're expecting and not to the extent that you'd expect given a lockdown within a coronavirus, within all these circumstances, around the world. So actually any medium news is positive news by my reckoning. And obviously the longer this goes on, the better it is for all of us, I think, as property investors. So, it's really good news. So let's have a look at what we're going to cover this week. So basically Rishi's dilemma. So we're going to talk about his little issue that he's got to deal with now. But look, Christmas is approved. So we'll talk quickly about that. It's approved. We can all have Christmas, or a decent Christmas. And then we'll talk, obviously, Rishi's dilemma. 100K more sales, they think, over the winter, which is just incredible, to have that. I mean, that's, this is where, we're getting lots and lots of positive news layered on positive news. And you know what? There's lots of people predicting the downturn, but it's not coming. But we'll look more at that. Zoopla October report. We'll see what they're saying about the thing. Flipping, is it back? Yeah, flipping properties. I mean, when I read this, I was a bit like, is this surreal? Is someone playing a joke? But apparently not. Well, we'll see. House is not flats. Yeah. So, this particular article is talking about how, houses are performing better than flats. So we'll have a look at that. House price crash. And we'll have a look at YouTube and who's making waves on YouTube and who's getting the most views on YouTube. Because I think it's important to see human nature at play here. Yeah. And then we're going to look at EICR increases. Okay. Because I think that's important. The EICR is Electrical Installation Condition Report, which is mandatory if you're letting a property out. And then we're going to look at affordability on lower incomes. Okay. And just how they're being affected. And unfortunately, low incomes and the young are being adversely affected by this more so than most other people. Now, obviously, if you're getting hit hard by this, that's a hard one to take because you're saying, no, it's bad for me too. And it is. But as a percentage, and unfortunately, all these stats is about percentages. If you're being hit hard, it's terrible. If you're not being hit, well, life can go on in the same way it may have before. Anyway, so guys, bottom line is with this, 5 days for Christmas, they're saying COVID plan lets groups of 3 households get in the mix, which is awesome. Okay, if that happens, the reality is, and we were chatting about this today on our Zoom meeting, our morning Zoom meeting with the team, and basically the consensus was, even if they didn't do it, we were going to do it anyway. So I think that is pretty much sums up the thinking of most people now. Is that we don't care what the government says, we're going to do what we want for Christmas. Now hopefully, and it seems to be the numbers are coming down, which is great. The lockdown is working. It certainly isn't having as dramatic effect on the thing as we may have thought. So guys, before I get into Rishi's dilemma, effectively what I want to do, if you can, make sure you hit the like button. We've got the comments there, no matter whether you're on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you are. By all means, leave comments, ask questions. I'm more than happy to answer them. I can stay on here as long as we need to get all the questions answered. But look, really, really, it'll help the channel out, help the marketing team who are behind me, and putting all this together afterwards. So if you can do that, that would be fantastic. All right, guys. So Rishi's dilemma. Yeah, Rishi pledges to make jobs #1 priority, and I think he has to do this. And I've been saying this all along. Is if you watch nothing else, watch the unemployment rate, because if you watch the unemployment rate, that's going to give you a good indication of how bad things are going to get. And so far, at 4.8, it's not that bad. Yeah, we went from 4.5 to 4.8, which we kind of expected because most people expected the furlough to end, but it didn't. It got extended. Yeah, so now we're going to see through the winter, and that's great news for property investors. It's bad news if your property is, if your tenants decided they're not paying for any reason, they can't be bothered calling the government and getting all the support packages and that, because you can't evict them, until January 11th, and then January 11th, and then even if you've got a court order, you've got to give them a further 14 days. So it's going to be January 25th before anyone really gets evicted, in reality. Now, let's talk about Rishi's dilemma. Because it's one thing to say, jobs, jobs, jobs. But the other thing is, you've got to be really careful about this because, they're spending a lot of money. And in fact, this is worldwide. Now, in some ways, this is a good thing that worldwide this is happening, because if it was just happening in one particular country, that country is going to get into huge debt and suffer for many, many years. But because this is a global thing, this is really changing things up. And I think, when we start to look at the actual numbers, they are staggering, make no mistake. But by the other token, if they didn't do that, we'd be getting into a lot deeper recession, and that recession would probably, play out over a longer period. Now, we are going to double dip, it seems. Okay, so we went in, dramatic 21%, I think it was 21.8 or whatever it was. And then we've come out and we actually grew. And now it looks like we're going back into the recession again, which we kind of expected that. So when they say double dip, we've double dipped, don't be too concerned about that. Okay, it's not a real biggie. The dilemma Rishi has, and the challenge is he's got only one direction he can go. The dilemma is, do you borrow more money and spend more money and keep and back up the spending that he's already done? Or do you go, you know what, enough is enough, we're going to leave it there, you're on your own. Now, if I was him, you'd have to spend more. And really, I don't think he has any other choice. I don't think any politician that wants to stay in power has any other choice. And the fact that all of them are doing it basically means that, it's almost, it's okay to do that. Yeah. And we'll deal with the consequences later, which I've talked about previously many times if you watch my videos about what I think the consequences are. I don't think they're going to be as bad as, a lot of people are making out. When we have a look at the house price crash people on YouTube, I'm not sure that's, I think that's more about getting views than it is about the reality of the situation. Look, and the reality is grim. There's no doubt about that. And there are some elements that, it may come true. That is an option. But I think a lot of people are playing that option for headlines more than actually good economics. Okay. So, I think with Rishi, his dilemma is, does he keep spending, or does he stop spending, or slow spending, or target spending? I mean, I said before, if he stops furlough, they may start to introduce something. And even with stamp duty, they may not just cut it off, but what they'll do is they'll target it to industries that they feel need it and where it'll be of value. Yeah. So I think, that's probably more likely. And really, I think he's backed into a corner. I think between Boris Johnson and Rishi, that's the only choice they have. So expect more borrowing, expect more of that to come. Yeah. But I don't think it is necessarily a bad thing. So UK housing market expects 100,000 extra home sales in early 2021. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people been talking about the crash coming next year and that we've just delayed it till next year. But you know what? There is a lot of pent-up demand, and there's a lot of people out there looking, and there's, a lot of people selling, a lot of people buying. It's a great market now, which just is surreal to be talking about it like that. It's almost like, really, can I be saying that? But that's the reality. I mean, there is the fact that I'm about to talk about flipping, it's just like scratch your head sort of territory. But that's what happens when you dump, so much equity or so much cash and currency, money supply into the world. It has to find somewhere to invest to get a return. Yeah, and so that's what we're seeing. So yeah, you're probably going to see house prices will go up and inflation may kick in a bit. But actually, if anything, it's stopping us from the other end, which is going into a deflationary cycle. Now, the risk, I think, the big risk for me is not necessarily deflation, it's probably stagflation, where effectively the economy is not growing, but inflation, is going. So, we'll see what happens there. Okay, but I think the reality with this is, 100,000 extra sales. I mean, most of those sales are already in the bag, and I think that's one of the key things here. There's a massive backlog. We're looking to sell a few properties now. So I spoke to my solicitor, and he basically said he is absolutely run off his feet. He chatted to me because we've got a long-term relationship, but he said, look, I can't take any more business. We've already taken too much more than the firm can handle. Not just him, the firm, the entire firm. And unfortunately, that seems to be echoed across a number of different places. So I think, this whole stamp duty thing, and the potential is the stamp duty will be extended possibly for any sales that have made or, beforehand or that, before the end of that. So I think people who leave it to last minute may miss out. We'll see if he extends it. I'm not so sure he will. And, I've been saying that for a while. I don't think they'll extend the carte blanche no stamp duty. I think what they'll probably do is reintroduce it for certain segments like overseas buyers. Yeah. And remember, they've got another 2%, which isn't law yet, but they've said they're going to do it. But a lot of that legislation, they've also said they're going to deal with the crisis and put it back. Yeah. So, we'll see what happens there. Guys, just remember, any questions you've got, chuck them into the comments, and I'm more than happy to answer them, as we go through, or leave them to the end. But yeah, so Zoopla housing market for October 20. Highest UK price growth since December 2010, which obviously 2010 was coming out of the recession, the last recession. But you look at that and you see, wow, that's, we're growing. There's no doubt about that. So the interesting thing here, this is what's happening, without doubt. And anytime, by the way, this graph, anytime it is above the 0% means that there's growth in that year. Yeah. Anytime it's below, it means that it's dropped. Yeah. So you can see there's a few months back in 18 where, house prices dropped off a little bit, but for the most part, they've been growing at, quite a good rate. Yeah. Now, interestingly, and I just want to show this, I know you can't probably see the detail in the actual graph on the right-hand side, but the reality is, if you look at that, you're going to see all greens down the side. Now, the reds in the middle of the column, that is actually just lower high sprout. It's still positive. So the entire place, and these are all, I should make this clear. This is London house prices. And the reason I want to track London and start putting London on your radar, and not just London, but London suburbs, okay? Because if you start putting them on your radar, what you're going to start to realize is that London is going to kick first. London will come back first. London will bounce first. So if you can see that happening there, then you see the ripple effect taking effect. Because that's what I'm predicting, and that's what I see already happening. The greens on the far thing is year-on-year growth, which there's year-on-year growth in London. From 16 to 20, we really didn't have a lot of growth. It was sitting around stagnant. But what's happened this year is it's actually not taken it off. And by the way, nobody's saying that it's a massive growth. As you can see there, 3 key takeaways from this report. 3.5% current market house price growth, or current UK house price growth. That's UK house price growth. Forecast UK house price growth for 2021, 1%. That's what Zoopla is predicting, 1%. If you remember what mine was, it's -3, but it's -3 in a range. I think some areas, like London, will probably do a bit better than that, and other areas will do worse. Yeah, and it's all based on fundamentals. Those with the best fundamentals will bounce back quickest. Okay, and then it's -6%. There's less transactions in 20 than 19. Yeah, which is what you expect. We were closed down there for a while. Cool. So let's get to some questions. What would be your most valuable advice for a newbie property investor? From James. James, I love your questions. Look, my most valuable advice, and I think actually I probably should have left that one until we went into the young, talking about the young and low income people. And I think, to be fair, Brett, there's a loud high-pitched noise. I don't know what the loud high-pitched noise is. It must be me. Let me see. Is that better? That's obviously Arlene. Everyone, Arlene, my wife, is watching, as you can see. She's in the comments. So hi, Arlene. But coming back to James. So James, what would be the most valuable advice is learn what you can right now, because you are living through, effectively a recession. Yeah, and it's very easy to do property when everything is going well. But the problem is you create an ego where you think, you may do one transaction and make money out of that. Yeah. Now the problem I have is when you make money on your first deal, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't. Yeah, loud high-pitched noise. I don't know what the loud high-pitched noise is. Is that on YouTube? It's on YouTube, yeah. It's the normal setup I've got, so I haven't got any other difference. Can you still hear me, guys? Can you just pitch in there and just say if you can hear me? Like something's being pressed. I don't know what it would be. Let me see. Yeah, okay. Yeah, as long as you can hear me, I think, I don't know, there's no settings that I know of that can be changed. Hold on, wait there. Maybe, has that fixed it? So hopefully that's fixed it. It was charging the battery on the mic. Anyway, we'll see. But yes, we can hear you. Good. Okay, anyway, let me get back to James's question. So look, the biggest thing is you're living through a recession now, learn from it, watch what people are predicting, and then track and see if, it actually comes true and what happens with it. Because I think the big thing here is that a lot of people, when times are good, they buy a property and they do well and they think, right, I know how to do property. And then what happens, they don't account for a recession. They don't account for interest rate rises. They don't account for, all different types of legislation changes and things like that. And what ends up happening is effectively you end up with this arrogance. And then when you go into a recession, you get your ass kicked. Yeah. So my biggest thing would be, get educated, really get out there and learn as much as possible. But, don't be afraid of, taking a risk now and buying a property and getting involved. But the key is, you've got to view it for long term. If you're buying it for short term, then now's not the time to necessarily get involved. Now's the time to be getting educated. Now's the time to be getting it all squared away and making sure you understand finance and you understand the process and you understand how to let a property and manage a property and do all these sort of things. And if you're not prepared to do that, get a team of professionals, people that know what they're doing to help you out. So hopefully that helps or that explains, James. So hopefully we've fixed that problem now. Yeah, it's fixed. It was. How's that? A little thing like a battery charging the mic and it stuffs it. Okay. Anyway, good. So let's talk about flipping, because I read this one. I was like, what the hell? This can't be right. Home flipping in UK reaches 12-year high despite COVID crisis. 1 in 40 homes bought was sold, again, less than a year in Burnley. Now, for me, great, okay. 1 in 40 homes are sold in less than a year. Okay, yeah, so, okay, flipping, they probably got them and done them up and done it that way, I dare say. Not true flipping in the sense that they're buying it and then, effectively buying it and flipping it before completion, which is how we would normally use flipping. A lot of times people will buy it, fix it up, which this is a great time to be, buying something, fixing it up and reselling it, because the market is hot. There's sales happening, So actually that's not too much of a problem. And I kind of agree with the article, but 1 in 40, okay, fair enough, that flipped within a year. Normally a flip we would consider is something when you don't own it, you sell it without owning it. That's a buy, renovate and, sell, strategy. But anyway, yeah, they're using the word flipping, that's fine. So it's not true. And what I would say here is, don't read an article like that without reading the actual proper text and working out that actually it's not talking about buying something and flipping it straight away. Yeah, I think you would find that a lot of those ones, they probably bought it here and sold it here because they've added value in some form. Yeah, we'll see. So houses, but not flats. The UK property market mini boom for houses, yes, but not flats. And do you know the amazing thing is, I read this and I thought, really? What? Hold on, what's this about? Demand for apartments is sluggish with fewer first-time buyers and the pandemic fueling a search for space. It's this, race for space thing again, which, okay, great. But then you look at the detail again, you read the actual article and it says, houses in Hertfordshire are getting snapped up very quickly, she says. This is the agent. And we naively thought our flat would sell easily too. Well, you know what? Great. In Hertfordshire, most of the stuff in Hertfordshire is not necessarily flats. It's much more of a houses market. And the question is, did she price it well? Did she? Now, there's so many other questions like that. So, it's great for these headlines. And this is one of the problems I have with the news, and why, in fact, I started doing these things in 2006. So that's 14 years ago, because I was frustrated with the headlines back in 2006, which if you think about it, 2006, 7, 8, we had the recession, So we started building up, but so it's amazing to have done this sort of now for 14 years. And we've started and stopped it and that sort of stuff, but now we're sort of back into every week again. But you got to watch the headlines, and you can't read the headlines. You've got to go further than that. So guys, any questions you've got, make sure you write them in. Happy to answer them. Okay, so where are we now? So let's see, house price crash. Hey. So this one, I thought it was quite interesting, this one, because obviously we're focusing a lot on our YouTube channel right now, and I'm just getting all the descriptions right and the tags and all the algorithm stuff, and it's fun and games. Look, what I keep finding out and what I keep seeing is these sort of headlines. This is just 12 headlines. Housing market 2021 crash, real estate, 2021 what to expect, 2020 500,000, 2021 250,000. Great property house crash 2021 explained, et cetera, and it just goes on and on and on, and you sort of sit there and go, really? Is it that serious? Like, is it that? But you realize that a lot of these guys, what they're doing is they're predicting the crash, because actually, as humans, we prefer pain more than pleasure. And, I've been saying this, unfortunately, I've been saying this too many times in the last few, weeks. But it is, it's amazing how much negativity there are. When you look at the top 20 listings, you've got, 16 of them are negative headlines, and unfortunately negative headlines sell. I've been trying a few of the negative headlines myself, and the unfortunate thing is they work. More people watch those videos, so you might hear some more negative from me. Unlikely, yeah. But anyway, look, is there going to be a house price crash in 2021? I don't think so, and most established economists and most, those aren't talking about a massive crash, yeah, in 2021. So I think we'll see, and I think what I'll do is I'll take these videos that people are doing now, predicting and this is in 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, now 21, predicting the crash, yeah, and we'll see if we actually get a crash, and I'll go through and I'll, pick the top 20 YouTubers and just see what actually happens with them, because it's going to be like the book that I wrote, which is, How to Predict House Prices, which you can get on my website. Basically I went through and I worked out that most experts are wrong most of the time. I've said it many times, and unfortunately that's pretty much how things are right now. So look guys, enough of that. 2021, we'll see what happens. Certainly right now in the UK, it still looks like there's enough demand. It still looks like Rishi's going to be, providing more funding, which will, sustain it. And actually things are pretty damn good, actually, considering, the second lockdown hasn't dropped as far as people thought. And there's a clear way out where we're doing the tiered things. The medicine's better, the vaccines are on the way, all these sort of things, which potentially we get back onto it. So yeah. One of the issues that will come, but is this, UK facing risk of systemic economic crisis. Official paper says, exclusive cabinet office briefing. Yeah, warns that Brexit, COVID, flood, flu, and unrest could lead to chaos. You know what, guys? It can, and I think this is one of the challenges right now. Is potentially it could lead to issues. All right, will it lead to issues? We'll see. I think one of the things with all this is you've got to take it with a grain of salt, yeah? These guys, and I know having worked in the government, I worked in medicine for a while in a hospital, we had to do all sorts of things like fan diagrams, yeah? Where you'd say, this is the worst, this is the best, this is the realistic, yeah? And the reality is, what I think these briefings are, is they have that, but of course, when the newspaper gets hold of them, they talk about the negative. And the worst case. And you know what? It could be the worst case, but generally I find worst case just very rarely happens. Yeah. So we'll see what happens there. All right. Electrical installation condition report. Deadline looms for landlords, and the deadline is the 1st of April 2021. Now, if you've put a new tenant in, basically since 1st of July 2020, you should have had one of these done before you move them in. You're not allowed to move them in until you've got one of these, okay? As of the 1st of April, existing tenancies must have them as well, okay? Now, here's the issue, all right? And this is why it's in the news right now, is because what we're finding is the suppliers we're using, and we've got properties all around the UK, so we probably have 20, 30, 40, 50 suppliers, that we use across the UK. And what we're finding, the overwhelming number of them are starting to raise their prices for EICRs, yeah? And I think that's going to start to happen where, prices are going to start to rise for these things because they've got to, PPE, and they've got to account for lockdowns, they've got to account for all this sort of stuff, tenants not being there when they go and all this, so, we're starting to see that sort of happening. The other side of it is they're already, and this is what, some of our guys that we work with regularly say, they're already booked out. Yeah. So in order to take more bookings, they're going to charge more so they can bring more staff on, and do that if they can find the staff, because this is the other issue. So look, I think, price almost, so Rob just mentioned, so Rob actually runs our maintenance up at Easy Track Property Management. So we're already seeing an average increase in almost 35%, for some areas. That's only going to soar. So that was my next point that I was going to make. He just stole it. Thanks, Rob. No, not really. No, to be fair, he was one of the ones that told me anyway, so no problems. But look, bottom line is with this, as the deadline looms, so, that 1st of April next year, when you have to, all the existing tenancies must have these. And if you don't, you just don't want to play that game. So get in early, and what we suggest is you start getting them done now while you still can, okay? And I think that's, that's important. So Nag just had a question. Hey Brett, please give your insight on capital gains tax and the end for entrepreneurs relief. Thank you. Cool. So, okay, so two questions. Capital gains tax, first of all. I'm not sure that the doubling of capital gains tax is going to have as big an effect. There's a $40 billion shortfall, I think it is, $40 billion shortfall that they've got to make up somewhere. Now, the challenge with that is that capital gains tax makes up a very small portion of that. The big things that do are things like income tax, income tax, NI, and things like that. There's another one, I can't remember what it is now. My brain's gone dead. Bottom line is, and this is part of Rishi's dilemma, is does he keep borrowing or does he now start taxing? Yeah. So, it's an interesting dilemma that he's got right now. He's caught between a rock and a hard place. Do I think they're going to double, as they've said, double the capital gains tax? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be as drastic as that. Do I think tax is going to go up? I do think taxes will go up, but I don't think they would just be capital gains tax. Because one thing all countries around the world seem to be doing is they seem to be supporting their property market, their share market and their property market. They've become essential things. And the last thing they want is the property market to die, because then voters go, get lost we want somebody else. Yeah. So I'm not, as much as some people are sitting there going, what, that's terrible. They're going to double tax. It's terrible. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. As for entrepreneurs relief, I mean, look, and I think both these, how many people really use them? Yeah. Because, and look, I love the entrepreneurs relief. Not that I've actually used it because we haven't really sold businesses. I tend to build businesses and keep them. But it's there. I think it's a fantastic thing, and I think entrepreneurs who take risks and do that should be rewarded. But they've had 10 years of austerity and they've looked at all different ways they can make money, and I think that's where what they'll probably do is put things back on the table. However, the other side with the entrepreneurs relief is this. The market is changing where now, if you think about London and Manchester and Birmingham, they've now got all these really well established, new technology companies and really, environments where they're, nurturing new startups and things like this. And there's the VCs, the venture capital market going on. So because that's happening, that actually, potentially is something that the government will want to promote. It will want to attract these companies in because, all they need and what, let's face it, America has a monopoly on the unicorns. America has a monopoly on all the big companies. China, to a lesser degree as well. UK, not really. We don't have too many headquartered, startups that we've actually, that have done really well. But that's what they're trying to do. Yeah. And so the sooner that they stimulate and they get that environment really working well and understand it's working well already. I think that's really well. So, what do I think with the entrepreneurs? Look, will they take it? I think even if they take it in the present form, I think they'll be putting back other stuff. Okay. And I think that's, probably what will happen. So, we'll see from there. Hopefully that answers your question, but yeah. Good. So, let's move on. Where are we? So, yeah, well, some good news actually. Yeah. So the EWS, so the external wall system effectively, which is the cladding. So we talked about Grenfell, and really they've left a lot of people up in the air, where pretty much what's happened is nobody knew what the hell was going on with this, whether they needed to get, well, they had to get an inspection, and mortgage lenders weren't lending until that was there, and effectively it made things really, really hard, And look, bottom line is, what they've said is agreement that buildings without cladding don't need the EWS system, which is great. Yeah, so that's nearly 450,000 homeowners set to benefit. Yeah, government funding to train 2,000 more people. But look, that's been something that has been really hanging over the market, and a lot of people have been, massively adversely affected about it. They effectively needed to sell their home and they weren't able to. Yeah, because they're waiting for this report, and the problem now, there's just not enough people to do those reports. So that's why they're training an extra 2,000 people. The challenge is if you're an owner of a building with cladding, whether you be a freeholder or a leaseholder, you're going to have to foot that bill. Yeah, in most cases, there may be some circumstances where you can prove that a developer knew knowingly, but I don't think that's going to happen in very many cases, So I don't see that as being a viable option as such, So yeah, look, I think with the EWS system, it's a pain in the bum, but it's one of those things that, it's a once in a lifetime thing. It doesn't happen very often. I think personally, and I think I've said this many, many times, I think the government should grab the bull by the horns and going, here is, 100 million, 1 billion, whatever it is. I think it's 1.1 billion it's going to cost to replace all the cladding. I think they should just do that. And I think they should just take it off the market, take that off the table, fix them all up, get them all done properly, and then put it behind us. Yeah, because it affects not only the tenants, but the landlords, everybody. Yeah, so you might say, well, actually, hold on, these wealthy landowners or homeowners, they should be the ones that pay. Well, great, but the problem is, meanwhile, it's going to take, and they reckon it could have taken 20 years to sort this problem out. Yeah, whereas I think if the government went, here's the funding, let's get this sorted, let's use industry, there could be a massive stimulus through this recession, which is kind of what we need right now, ways of stimulating the economy. And this is a great way because it gets all of the construction industry working and that sort of thing. All right, so let's talk about the low income. COVID has caused lower housing affordability despite house price drop, says Moody's. Housing affordability will worsen for young and low income population groups. Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, these guys are always targeted. Not targeted, but they always get hit hardest. Look, if you're young and you're sitting out there, if you're on a low income and you're sitting out there, unfortunately, what you've got to do is be really, really disciplined. Yeah. First of all, you probably got yourself into some debt, which is normally you do in your 20s, even before your 20s in most cases. You've got to be disciplined to get yourself out of debt, but then you've got to be disciplined to save that first. And what I always say is, if you can save 5% over 6 months, then you deserve to have a mortgage. Yeah. Doesn't mean you have to, but you've proven yourself that you can do it. Yeah, and I think that's key, and I think that should be promoted, and that actually is something that I know Boris Johnson said, and he come under fire for it, saying, it's irresponsible lending, bullshit, stick it up, you freaking idiots, because it's not. Yeah, I think really we want as much home ownership as possible. It creates stability in our communities. It creates a thriving property market where people are moving up the ladder. It creates all sorts of benefits to society. And I think if you look at how you get out of a recession, what you do, one of the things you do, is you invest in housing, constructing new housing. And that's been, I've been saying that for over 20 years. And that's not just from me, that's from, my mentors who taught me property, that's how you do it. And invariably, a lot of times they resist it. Politicians resist that at the start, and eventually that's how they end up doing it. All right. So guys, that's it for the formalities today. So basically, look, if you're sitting there, you're not really sure about what's going on, you haven't really got certainty and clarity, then what I recommend you do is you jump on our website, gladfish.com. There's a huge amount of resource there. Okay, huge amount of information that you can go through. You've got the team, if you want to call them, and you can discuss what your issues are, what your thoughts are, anything you want to know about property. Okay, we can cover the broad spectrum. There's over 2,000 blogs. There's all that sort of stuff that's there. So feel free to jump on there. It's all available free. And really get that clarity, because that's really what you need given the circumstances now. And you know what? It's not just now, it's all the time. If you get certainty around how to invest, where to invest, what to invest, if you can get a plan and a strategy together, it's amazing how far you can go. Yeah. It's the first steps that are hardest. Yeah. So jump on there, and speak to the team. And look, if you're interested, we've got the 7-part webinar series that you can sign up to as well, which is basically, it's the final week, so they don't build them like they used to. And really what this is about, a lot of people are saying, well, actually construction, property now, they don't build it like they used to. Well, I have something to say about that. But also we're going to look at property management, and we're going to look at how property management is done this day. So we've got myself, Ritesh and Dawn, who are all seasoned professionals. So, talking about that topic, and it'll be really good. So you can go on there, you can go to gladfish.com/webinars and sign up there. Yeah. So, obviously if you go to Gladfish, you'll see the webinars, and, you can talk through there, but or sign up on there. But guys, look, is there any other questions before I head off and get started? We haven't had a lot of questions today. So, yeah, unfortunately my stream is full of, you've got a high-pitched voice or high-pitched noise. But look, guys, if there isn't any questions, I want to thank you very much. And look, as always, make sure you click the like button, subscribe. If you've got any questions, put them into that email address, webinars@gladfish.com, and I'm happy to answer them back with videos. Or if they're more, specific in nature, by all means speak to the team, and they can actually go through and explain, and answer whatever and give you that clarity. But guys, I want to thank you again, and we'll see you next week. And yeah, until next week, have a great day and live with passion. See you later. Bye, guys.